Hello and welcome to Chakra News. The DRDO has successfully conducted the maiden test flight of India's homegrown Kusha long-range surface-to-air missile system just off the coast of Odisha. The US, after years of denying and sanctioning Iran for nuclear enrichment, has now offered a nuclear deal to the Saudis. And the Indian Navy has inducted the second anti-submarine warfare shallow water craft of the Mahe-class, the INS Malvan. So what do all these disparate developments mean? To unpack all this and more, we've got with us the editor Chakra News, Sandeep Unnithan. Sandeep, thank you for joining us.
Good to be back, Deepak.
Let's begin with Kusha. Now, there's been a lot of conversation about it.
Yes.
What is the Kusha for the unversed?
Well, the Kusha is an extended range, long range air defense system. This is something that the DRDO has been working on for a number of years. This missile system, simply put, plugs in the gap between the Barak 8 and the S-400, which is roughly the distance between 80 kilometers to 400 kilometers. That is the gap that the Kusha fills. It has three types of missiles. It's like an indigenous version of the S-400 missile. The S-400 is, as you know, it's got multiple missiles as well, all the way from 100 kilometers to about 400 kilometers. It was used for the first time during Operation Sindoor. Kusha is going to be India's indigenous version of the S-400. The first systems would possibly come in the next 2 years. They're saying 2028 onwards. All of these systems could be inducted by the 2030s. But this is the first step, as in the first test firing of the missile was conducted very recently. The Defense Secretary mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh just announced that test off the coast of Odisha. So it's a very important milestone for this very critical surface-to-air missile program.
The Kusha will play a very important role in the Sudarshan Chakra.
Yes.
Now, it's been compared to Israel's Iron Dome. Explain to us, what will the Sudarshan Chakra be in its entirety? What are its different parts?
Yeah.
And how will it function for a country like India, such a vast, expansive territory?
Right. So the Sudarshan Chakra program is a system of systems where it is one gigantic system which integrates into its chain networks all of the existing systems and adds several more to it. Like you have the IACCS, which is there. You have the S-400. All of these will be integrated plus some more. The Kusha will, of course, be a very important tire of this. And the interesting thing is that we have now started to look at air defense as an integrated network-centric approach rather than just individual missiles. Or we bought one S-400 from here, we got Barak 8 from here. What you saw during Ops Sindoor is several years, 3 decades of the Indian Air Force's planning for air defense, where they had this entire they knitted together this indigenous program architecture into which all of these various systems, whether they were Baraks or they were S-400, all of them came into. Sudarshan Chakra will be all of this and much more. It will also integrate the ballistic missile defense program, which is already being deployed outside some very key locations. Mumbai and Delhi are two of them. These will all be integrated into this larger system of systems. The time that is being given for that is 2035. The Prime Minister mentioned that during his address at the Red Fort on the 15th of August last year. But experts have said, look, we need them very quickly because there are war clouds looming. You have an aggressive Pakistan. You have a China that's not so friendly. And air defense, as you've seen with the Russia-Ukraine war, with the ongoing Iran-US conflict, has played a very crucial role in all of this. The Iron Dome system, for instance, has helped Israel absorb a lot of Iranian strikes. Iran has not had a comprehensive air defense umbrella, because of which they have taken a lot of beating, punishing air defense raids. American bombers are flying literally unmolested through Iranian airspace. So Kusha is really important for us because it gives us indigenous capabilities to take down aerial threats like cruise missiles, maneuvering targets, aircraft, long-range precision bombs, all of these things, not the ballistic missiles. That is handled by a completely different category of indigenous systems. So you're looking at a whole set of indigenous. You have your Akash, you have your Rajendra Akash, then you have the Barak 8 above that. Then, of course, the Spider is also there somewhere. Then the high end of this air defense network is your S-400. Kushas comes in between all of this. So it's got three interceptor missiles, the M1, the M2, and the M3, 150, 250, 350 plus range. So it's three different types of interceptor missiles. So very important test. There will be many more tests before that program can take off. IAF, the Indian Air Force, is of course the lead agency for this. There has been an acceptance of necessity for uh, uh, 5 squadron purchase by the Indian Air Force for about 2 billion or so, which is not a lot of money because if you look at it, the S-400 that you've imported, 5 squadrons cost you what, $5 billion.
Right.
So we're getting the Kusha for half the price, but it has to be proved. The missile has to be proved, it has to be tested, all of that. The S-400 is a proven system. It's a very good system, but we need to get our own, requirements. And I'm going back again to when the Indian Air Force projected its requirements for the S-400. It came before Manohar Parrikar, and he was asked, the Air Force said, look, we are losing squadrons, we need the S-400. So he said, how many do you need? He says, 10 squadrons. He says, do one thing, take 5 S-400s, you need them. Take 5 of the indigenous DRDO programs. So
Right.
DRDO has been at it for about a decade now. The test that you just saw a few days back is actually the result of almost 10 years of development work. So the Air Force offset its requirement for 5 S-400 squadrons by committing to buy 5 Kusha squadrons. It's a different matter, of course, that post-op Sindoor, they've gone in for 5 more squadrons. So you're looking at possibly 15 such squadrons, 10 of the S-400 plus 5 of the Kusha. It's a very important program. It must be underscored, and we have no option but to go all out.
No, perhaps the best thing about the whole thing is the fact that it is indigenous, which means that provided there is a sanction from the government, we can produce any number of these. And that will be crucial in protecting a territory as vast as ours. What do you see about the timeline? What have you heard about the timeline in which we can induct the 10 or 15 of these squadrons?
Well, 5 squadrons is the deliveries are set to begin by the 2028 time frame, but I see this spilling over to the 2030s, early 2030s. In the next 6 or 7 years, you should have those 5 squadrons being delivered, because this is like, you're developing the missile while you have an acceptance of necessity. The missile has to pass certain tests. Unless those tests are haven't been cleared, the Air Force will not place that order. So it's contingent on performance, in meeting the Air Force's, performance, envelope, whatever they expect out of that missile system. So if you get this Kusha, then you will not possibly need more S-400s. And this is the big thing, that you have to, the DRDO needs to deliver this system. Otherwise, what happens is then the services, and rightly so, they will ask for more missiles, and they will go for the import option. Import option, very attractive. You spend a lot of money, you get the capabilities, but you don't get the know-how, you don't get the know-buy. That can only come through an indigenous system like the Kusha.
You've already said that it comes at what is supposed to be half the price of an S-400. But a critical thing in modern air defense systems is the cost to benefit ratio. For instance, in Israel or in Gaza, at other places, in Russia, for instance, they've used missiles worth $4 million to take down a projectile that would have cost, I don't know, maybe $100,000.
So you're not going to be taking down drones with the Kusha, right? The Kusha is for high-value targets, aerial targets, maneuvering targets.
Right.
Cruise missiles, hypersonic missiles, aircraft, of course.
My point is, will the missiles used in this system also be relatively cheaper compared to the S-400?
They will be, of course, because they're being indigenously manufactured. DRDO has used a lot of the expertise it's gained from programs like the long-range air-to-air missile, the Astra, for instance, the dual pulse motor, those kind of technologies. They've been brought into the Kusha as well. And this is not a very unique thing. I mean, across the world, you've seen countries like Israel, for instance. They sold us the Spider surface-to-air missile, which is actually the Python and the Darby ground-to-air launched versions of the air-to-air Python and the air-to-air Darby missiles. So a lot of our research and development expertise that went into, we collected by developing the Astra series of beyond visual range missiles has gone into Kusha as well.
Sandeep, you've stressed upon the fact that it needs to be proven. Now, on that count, I wouldn't worry so much because if the record of the Indian missile program is any indication, things will turn out for the better. What I'm really excited about is the export opportunities that come because India is already selling BrahMos.
Yes.
And there's interest in the Astra. Do you see a number of countries lining up?
Absolutely. No, see, the BrahMos missile sales rocketed, if I can use that word, after Op Sindoor, when countries who were lining up, we had been pitching this missile to for the longest time, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, they saw this missile being used in combat and they saw it literally cut through air defense systems like a hot knife through butter.
Right.
And they realized that, look, this is the one system that they have that has a fighting chance against a larger adversary like China, for instance. And that's how they kind of lined up to buy that missile system. It's one of it is not one of it is the most successful Indian export sales, projected to cross over $1 billion, right, in the last 1 or 2 years alone. Now, Kusha has to cross that BrahMos high mark. It has to prove itself. Once it proves itself, it becomes our calling card for exports. We can't export the S-400. That's a standalone system which the Russians have said there is going to be no TOT. It's a very, very, very closely guarded thing. The Russians, ensure that no know-how or transfer technology will ever get out of the S-400 missile program. But with the Kusha, this gives us a very important surface-to-air missile, long-range surface-to-air missile to sell to countries in the region.
Talking about selling to countries, let's talk about a very important deal that's taken place. The US is now giving a civil nuclear deal and provisions for nuclear enrichment to the Saudis.
Yeah, interesting deal. It's been in the works for a couple of months now. As of 2025, Trump announced that nuclear deal. But then Trump, being Trump, is now thrown in a spanner into the works where he's now made it incumbent on Saudi Arabia to recognize the state of Israel before they can get that nuclear deal.
Right.
Now, that has thrown the whole deal in a tizzy. I mean, the Saudis are fuming because they said, look, this was not meant to be. If you look at it, they have a point. The original draft did not say that you have to sign the Abraham Accords before we give you nuclear reactors. And, you look at it this way, the United States does not do things like this for love and fresh air. They do it with a strategic goal in mind. India got a strategic deal, the US civil nuclear deal, 2006, finally passed by India in 2008. That was because the United States wanted to bring India into a strategic embrace. They felt that China was rising very quickly. The swing state in the India-US-China relationship, where they said that, look, these are going to be the 3 largest economies in the middle of the 21st century. We need to get India on our side. Therefore, what does India need? India said, we need nuclear fuel. You made us pariahs for the last 30, 40 years. Our reactors need fuel. Therefore, a civil nuclear deal. George W. Bush, right? 20 years back. Cut to 2026, 2025 when it began. Saudi said, look, we want nuclear fuel as well. We need to run reactors so we don't use oil to, burn oil and run our desalination plants or generate electricity. But there's a underlying threat to this Saudi nuclear deal, which is unsafeguarded reactors, which gives Saudi Arabia the capability to divert fuel, spent fuel, enrich it, and get a nuclear weapon. Which is why everybody in the United States is up in arms. A lot of congressmen have questioned this. This has to be passed by US Congress as well. It might eventually go through, but there have been a lot of concern about this provision of, unsupervised enrichment of uranium, the spent fuel, which will give Saudi Arabia the path to a bomb. I mean, you look at it this way. Saudi Arabia Crown Prince MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, about 2018, he said, if Iran gets the bomb, we will go for the bomb as well. No two ways about it. Last year, September 2025, Saudi Arabia struck a deal with Pakistan, a strategic partnership where, if you were to believe the Pakistani defense minister, he said it has a nuclear component as well, which means that Saudi Arabia gets access to Pakistan's nuclear weapons. He quickly retracted that statement. But the fact is, the Pakistani Saudi Arabian strategic embrace is aimed at Israel.
Right.
So it's a bit of a problem here. If you look at Trump now realizing, oh my God, what have I done? Now he's inserted that clause of the Abraham Accords. You have to recognize Saudi Arabia has to recognize Israel before I action the thing. Because the Israelis must have also been upset. How can you give them an unsafeguarded route like that? Which is literally telling the Saudis you're free to, build nuclear weapons sometime in the distant future. And the Saudis already have a very close relationship with the Pakistanis, who have a history of nuclear proliferation.
Right.
They've been selling to the highest bidder, which I call the link strategy of not Islamabad, General Headquarters Rawalpindi, where thanks to good looks tailors in Islamabad, we know the fact that AQ Khan, who's this Pakistani nuclear scientist, ran the biggest nuclear proliferation racket in history, right? In 2004 is when this came to light, when Libya surrendered its nuclear weapons program. They said, look, we don't want to go the way the US hammered Iraq. So here are our WMDs. So they just surrendered everything. And all of these nuclear bomb blueprints that they had were for a weapon called the CHIC-4, which China had tested, passed on to Pakistan. Those blueprints in Chinese were packed in this suit bags of good looks tailors, Islamabad, which is where AQ Khan got his suit stitched. That revealed to the world for the first time that AQ Khan had been for 20 years running this massive nuclear arms bazaar. I mean, any country had to just pay him and he would provide centrifuges. By the way, he's the guy who sold centrifuges to Iran.
Yeah.
The first generation of, you know that, right? The first generation of centrifuges, once Pakistan moved to the second generation, he sold the old ones to Iran. Now everyone says, so the Pakistani establishment calls him a rogue one-man show. We had no knowledge this was going on, and he was put under house arrest, and he died, I think, of COVID incident, a Chinese virus, right, in 2021, AQ Khan. And he was a one-man show. Now, you have to be pretty naive to believe that AQ Khan, one man, was running this massive nuclear black market in one of the most, shall we say, surveilled countries in the world where the military runs the nuclear weapons program. You mean to say that AQ Khan was smuggling out nuclear material, blueprints, centrifuges, commandeering Pakistani Air Force aircraft to fly them to North Korea? So stuff like this. Now, coming back to the nuclear agreement with Saudi Arabia, now the problem with this deal is you just have to join the dots. Saudi Arabia gets a nuclear deal with the United States. The US sets up nuclear reactors in KSA. The reactors start producing fuel. The fuel is unsafeguarded. There's no supervision. Therefore, Saudi Arabia has an option to use its friends from Pakistan to process the fuel and to make weapons, to guard against Israel on one side and Iran on the other. Right? So you're looking at a nuclear triangle again, because Iran will certainly get if the regime does not fall in Iran, they will almost certainly go for the bomb, right? So you're looking at Israel, which already has bombs. You have Pakistan, which has them, and two countries, the biggest Sunni Arab country, Saudi Arabia, the biggest Shia country, that's Iran, also going for a bomb. So this is like a nuclear chain reaction that's going to take place. And my fear personally is that at some not too distant point in the future, the United States will offer Pakistan a nuclear deal as well. Right? Yeah, I mean, they take a long view of things. We might think, Bush was asked, will you give Pakistan a nuclear deal in 2006 on his way back? he was, flying back to the United States. He stopped over at Pakistan. He had this big thing with Pervez Musharraf in Islamabad, the INS other presidential palace. It was a big thing. He was asked, "Will you give Pakistan a nuclear deal?" He says, "Well, both countries have two different trajectories and histories." He was alluding to the AQ Khan black marketing network. So at that time, it didn't appear that Pakistan would get that because of the AQ Khan host. But in the future, I'm talking of 10, 20, 30 years down the line, when the US sees China and India as two strategic competitors, it will want to get Pakistan as a hedge against these two countries, right? They want a solid a base there in the region. One side of it faces India, the other side faces China. Of course, the problem here is that Pakistan's nuclear weapons are Chinese in origin. So how will the Americans get in there? Will they give them a route saying that, okay, I know you have Chinese nuclear weapons, but here, take my nuclear reactors. I'm going to give you a deal. You're impoverished. You don't have energy. You have a large population to feed. Take these reactors from us. Uh, we'll get you into this deal. Stay away from the Chinese, right? Henceforth, I don't discount any of these possibilities from happening in the future. I mean, who, for instance, would have thought that the US would give India a nuclear deal in 2006?
Right.
If the US wants it, if the US president wants it, if the US establishment wants it, they will go for that deal. That is why I think while the Saudi US nuclear deal is still up in the air, it may or may not go through. Depends on how badly Saudi Arabia wants it and will they actually bite the bullet and recognize Israel, for instance, or will this deal collapse? At which point you have to ask yourself, in the future, could the US give Pakistan a similar deal?
But talking about the Saudis, why do they want a nuclear weapon so bad? Is it, and I'm just guessing here, is it because in the recent conflict they found no protection from the US bases there?
It's a good question because they got hammered. You see, they went in for the deal with Pakistan because they saw the way Qatar had been attacked by the Israelis, right? And said, look, we might be attacked tomorrow. You need a strategic kind of a nuclear umbrella. And it's basically telling the Americans, look, you guys, you didn't protect us from, we don't rely on you for protection. We've got other friends as well. So that's when the Americans stepped in and they said, oh, listen, we got to give the Saudis a nuclear umbrella of sorts. We have to tie them into a nuclear deal. We have to ensure they don't stray into the Chinese orbit, which is why this whole deal was floated by Trump. Now, the Saudis need a bomb for various reasons. One is, of course, prestige, right? They are the most powerful Sunni Arab country.
The custodians of the holy mosques.
Holy mosques, right?
Yeah.
There's civilizational reasons for it. They fear that the Iranians could get a nuclear weapon. And if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, they might, use it to threaten the Saudis as well. So they feel deeply insecure. And you have Mohammed bin Salman, who's going to be here for a very long time. If you look at his family history, the Al Sauds, they ruled for very long. They lived to their 80s and the 90s. This guy is in his 40s, late 30s, early 40s. He's going to be here for the next half a century, right? He's looking at the long game. And my sense is that he wants the bomb. I mean, despite the fact that he's an NPT signatory, he signed, Saudi Arabia signed the NPT, I think in the late 80s, somewhere, late 80s, early 90s. But they will want the bomb for reasons of prestige, for protecting themselves, and the fact that they don't need the American security umbrella beyond a point. And like you said, coming back to your point, it did shake them quite a bit when their bases, American bases on their soil were attacked by the Iranians with impunity, right? So it's literally everyone trying to protect themselves.
Right.
It's each man for himself, and especially a country like Saudi Arabia, they need to go in for their own protection. They need to have their plan Bs and their plan Cs, which is why I think a nuclear weapon, a Saudi nuclear weapon, will be an inevitability if Iran goes for the nuclear. And now we know, and like I said earlier, if the regime survives in Iran, they will go all out to get a nuclear weapon. Because right now you're looking at a bunch of hardliners who are running the show. Khamenei always kept the bomb option Ayatollah Khamenei. He was a bit of a moderate. He kept the bomb option in the closet. He didn't want it to be enriched beyond a point where it get a nuclear weapon. But the current lord, whoever's running Iran, is a hardline faction of the IRGC, Ahmad Vahedi and his friends and colleagues. They could choose a hardline and say, look, we were attacked because we didn't have nukes. We need to go all out and get it, and then become like North Korea. Nobody touches North Korea because North Korea has got its own nuclear weapons, and North Korean weapons are thanks to AQ Khan. So it's that link strategy, like I said, Libya, Iran, and North Korea. All three countries that got know-how through the AQ Khan.
Moving on to the third story of the day, the INS Malvan is finally here.
Yes.
So this is an anti-submarine warfare shallow water craft. What is this sort of a craft and what does it do?
Well, it's a shallow water craft. A shallow water anti-submarine warfare craft is a specialized vessel that's meant to operate in shallow waters, and
that is near the coast,
closer to the coast. Within the EEZ of a country, operating just off the coast where Pakistani submarines would be deployed. Now, Pakistan has a large growing fleet of conventional submarines, and the thing with conventional submarines is that they are ambush predators, as in they have to come in close to ports. They have to come because they don't have the kind of speed that, say, nuclear powered attack submarines are. Nuclear powered attack submarines are like great white sharks. They move at tremendous speeds in the open ocean, right? They big hunters, predators. Conventional submarines are ambush predators. They're like pythons. They have to lie in wait somewhere. They have to go to choke points. Or they have to lie outside harbors. All of these areas where it would be very difficult for larger warships like we have our destroyers, our frigates, which are 6,000 tons, 7,000 tons and above, to operate. So you're looking at the Mahe-class, which have their lighter ships. They have a displacement of about 900 tons, much smaller.
Very small.
1/6 the size of a Delhi class. And they're sub-chasers. As they operate closer to the coast, they carry sonars. They have variable depth sonars. They have hull-mounted sonars. And they have anti-submarine rockets. They have torpedoes. So what they do is they're sub-chasers. Right? They run up. Once a contact is picked up, they go at very high speed. They prosecute the contact, which is to attack the submarine with depth charges, torpedoes, rockets, all that. And several of them come in and attack submarines. So that's the use case of this. And Navy's about a decade ago projected a requirement for about 16 of these shallow water ASW craft. They're built by the Garden Reach shipyard and the Cochin shipyard. So the total of 16. I think it's 10 in one shipyard and 6 in the other. And all of them will be delivered over the next couple of years, in 2 or 3 years. All 16 will be in service. There are 10 now? 10
this is the second of the Mahe-class, but there are other vessels as well.
Which has already been in service. So another 5 or 6, and this entire class, it's not very expensive. You look at it, it's about 13,000 crore. Right. So not expensive ships. And interestingly, they're water jet powered. So that's a new thing which
makes them extremely practical in shallow water.
In shallow water, exactly. So water jets are something that
you see on jet skis, right?
Well, not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah, kind of jet skis, but you traditionally have seen water jet craft being used for petrol vessels, and I've been on a couple of these water jet craft, the Indian Navy and the Coast Guard. They're very interesting, as in they have it's like a jet engine principle, but for the water.
Right.
So these are the Indian Navy's largest water jet powered craft, and like you said, their water jets give them an ability to maneuver close to the shore, to guard passages, and to even maybe clear out the passages as larger ships are sailing out into the ocean. Yeah. They want to go there and sweep the area.
And there are no propellers which can get stuck in, any vegetation or anything.
And plus they have a high speed. They move at 30 knots plus, burst. They don't carry a helicopter, but I think that is a design feature they can possibly look at introducing with drones. For instance. And you need to have, we've been talking about, mothership concepts for unmanned surface vessels, drones, UUVs and all of that. ships like this could possibly, I'm not sure if they have the design integrated into these features have been integrated into the design, but these craft would be ideal for being motherships for these UUVs, USVs, drones, and all that. They stand out and they control these guys. They can use them for mine sweeping. They can use them for submarine detection. All of that. While this craft stays out of thing, and when the contact is thing, they can either the first line of defense could be the drones, and then these craft move in with their close-in weapons and take out the contact. But it's a good, interesting series of vessels, and they replace capabilities that the Indian Navy has had over the years. You had the Mahe-class, which were bought from the Soviet Union. Then you had your Mahe-class, which was POC-class again. So this is actually the successor, the Mahe-class. They're the successors to this large series of Soviet-built ASW, specialist ASW vessels.
Sandeep, now, see, submarines are a threat, and they've been a threat for like more than half a century, in fact, a bit longer. But tell me about these unmanned underwater vessels. How effective would an anti-submarine warfare craft be against those miniature submarines?
Good question, Deepak. And the thing is that these, UUVs, the fact is you have some pretty big ones. Boeing has its Orca, the Chinese have their variants of that. Now, these craft are lethal because you don't need to create. These are mini submarines where you don't have to cater for crew. You can pack these vessels with lithium-ion cells, and they have, a very long ability to stay underwater for very long times, extended periods of time, and then eventually carry torpedoes, carry kind of mines, do all of those things that you would expect manned submarines to do. So these would be, our shallow water craft would be very, very adept at identifying these large UUVs, for instance. But, it's not just the warship alone that's going to detect it. See, you have to think of anti-submarine warfare as a system of systems.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you have the IACCS, which the Air Force has done a great job of operationalizing, and we saw that during Ops Sindoor. The Navy needs to look at anti-submarine warfare as a massive network of sensors, which they're already doing, incidentally. You have your surface element, you have your undersea element. The undersea element is still work in progress. For instance, if you had that undersea element, you would have been able to detect an American submarine that was hunting off your coast, tracking the IRIS data, for instance. We didn't have that capability, so we are blind underwater. We need to get those eyes and ears underwater so that ships like the Mahe, the Malvan, for instance, are actually just the tip of the sword. The rest of the sword is this network of sensors, satellite-based sensors, drone-based sensors, and of course, surface-based sensors, which then activate this thing. You have to create a kill chain, a very lethal kill chain on the surface of the water and below it, which is what the Malwan actually represents. And I think Navy is working towards that network. It should be there in a couple of years. But personally, for me, the Malwan is interesting. It's the first time that you have a warship, an Indian naval warship named after this particular region of the Konkan, and that's where my co-author, Captain M.N.R. Samant, hails from. He is from the Malvan region, and it's a very interesting part of our maritime history, because a lot of our Maratha Navy personnel, they came from there. Captain Samant, of course, was from there as well, and you have Shivaji Maharaj's Wagner, his the steel claws that he used in combat. That's the crest of this ship. But that's just a personal anecdote.
Well, thank you so much, Sandeep. For our audience, that's all we have for you this week. We'll be back again soon. Until then, stay tuned to Chakra News.